Donald Trump is a very dominant president in the White House, and he has the capacity and power to make it very, very difficult for us going forward, particularly economically. And that is going to be a problem for...
I heard the mood inside government among some, described by one commentator as happy earlier, which sounded a little odd until you remember how Keir Starmer was cheered by Labour MPs in the Commons today. Now, no great surprise to see that. It is what they do every Wednesday at question time. But today, unless I was imagining it, they actually seem to mean it. And some of those were those MPs who keep saying privately they can't wait to see the back of Starmer as their leader and our Prime Minister. So as getting on President Trump's bad side over the war in Iran has been mockingly compared to Winston Churchill for refusing to quickly and fully back US attacks on Iran. In front of the world, in front of the bust of Churchill, Donald Trump keeps in the Oval Office as blowing a hole in the so-called special relationship actually strengthens Starmer's position with British voters who don't much rate him or like him, according to the polls. And is it possible, maybe just possible, the standing, as he says, by principles of international law and calling out the lack of a clear US plan for the war in Iran and its aftermath may have done something to stave off the threat to Starmer's premiership? But even if the PM has eased some of the pressure on him on his own side, will that help when the time comes to make tough decisions on Britain's defence spending? Because surely the time for those tough decisions has come. Now, so let's welcome Anna Mikhailova, Times Radio's political editor. Hi to you, Anna.
Hi, John.
Hello. I'm also joined by Steve Swinford, the political editor at The Times. Hello to you, Stephen.
Hello.
Hi, good to have you. Now, Anna, can I come to you first? And it is true, isn't it, that a lot of Labour MPs see standing up to Donald Trump is just exactly what they want to see.
Yeah, and I was in the chamber for PMQs, and the Labour backbenchers were most animated when they were heckling Kemi Badenoch, accusing her that she wants escalation. So, privately, this is something MPs say. They do talk about the special relationship as something that perhaps needs to be reviewed, even in terms of the way the defence works, in terms of how interconnected the UK is with the US. And some of them echo analysis that we saw from Ben Judah, who's until recently an advisor to David Lammy, who described it as an abusive special relationship. So privately, that is more where Labour MPs are at. So they're certainly not criticising Keir Starmer on his current position, on this at least.
Yeah, and Stephen, what kind of feedback are you hearing among Labour MPs when they are speaking frankly behind the scenes about this chilling relations between Starmer and Donald Trump?
I think for the most part they're very pleased. They've got their Hugh Grant moment from their Prime Minister, who has said that the original US action was illegal. It wasn't just illegal, it wasn't a thought through plan. And today there was another barb from Starmer when he said, look, we shouldn't be hanging on every last word of Donald Trump. Now, that is all very well, given that the last word was saying, you're not Winston Churchill, and a kind of whole host of other insults that were sent the Prime Minister's way. But I think the Prime Minister's broad point is that, OK, this relationship is not in a great place right now. Quite clearly, he's ready to admit that, and he's ready to fire back in kind. But he's trying to argue, and he's broadly correct in is something much more fundamental and much deeper in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of the kind of embedded nature of defence between the US and the UK. But, and there is a but with this, there's always a but, Donald Trump is a very dominant president in the White House, and he has the capacity and power to make it very, very difficult for us going forward, particularly economically. And that is going to be a problem for Starmer. He's clearly taken this personally, and if Starmer believes that he was right in this kind of careful, delicate balancing act of diplomacy and trying to suck up to Trump essentially for so long, then clearly he has to acknowledge there are now going to be significant repercussions and problems because he has chosen to take a stand on the issue of Iran.
Right, and on that, Stephen, what are you picking up from government on the repercussions or the possible repercussions of this falling out when it comes to particular areas of policy or lines of communication?
I think at the moment this government is just going day to day like the rest of us, because as you look at it, there's an unfolding immense conflict that has huge economic repercussions. So the immediate issue is they are grappling with the possibility, as Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, called it, of an economic shock that could see like our listeners' household bills, their energy bills jumped by £500. So we had this surreal spring forecast yesterday where Rachel Reeves told us we'd all be £1,000 better off by the end of this Parliament. And the forecast was dead on delivery because it was already irrelevant because of events in the Middle East. So I think there will come a time when Trump will kind of be able to exact some level of revenge and economic pain on us. But right now, the immediate economic pain is a direct consequence of what is happening in Iran and what is unfolding before our eyes. And more than that, it is that we are not really in a position to properly defend ourselves in the region at the moment and our people. And we're still seeing the Royal Navy doesn't have an asset there. It could take 2 weeks to get there. And given how choreographed this was, I'm sure, John, you like me were watching flight trackers for the few weeks before this, where you saw this convoy of American bombers and planes and logistics going on the flight radars. Everyone knew this was coming, and it is baffling, I think, when I talk to people, some ministers, as to why we weren't better prepared for the situation we are. Like, it is known, if you bomb Iran, they respond with force. This was a known outcome. We saw it last summer. So why are we now in a position where Iran has been bombed and we don't have assets in the region? That seems very odd to me.
Right. And Anna, on that question of Britain's military punching power, we heard the Prime Minister again today saying that he sees the need to go faster and bigger on defence spending. But it's not, at this point, clear if that means accelerating stated spending plans and targets.
Well, exactly. And you've heard the Treasury Minister, James Murray, this morning give extremely woolly answers on that when challenged on how this uplift in defence spending will be funded. And this is a huge question. And the truth is, and people will privately admit this, but aren't saying it publicly, is to be able to afford the uplift in spending. And don't forget, what the people who did the defence review originally, they wanted much more than 3% or even 3.5%, given the nature of the threats the UK faces. What is needed is cuts in other budgets in a situation where there is such sluggish growth, and on top of that, additional economic shocks are coming down the road. So what does that mean in practice for the British public? That means a smaller welfare state, not a bigger one as is forecast. That means less spending on things like, hospitals, schools, the things that Labour has been focusing on and is quite keen to focus on. And yet, while there is rhetoric on defence, there isn't actually the money being put towards it.
Yes. And Steve, last point to you on precisely that. I'm going to be talking very soon to the Defence Minister, Al Carnes. Now, he's been open about saying he wants to see an acceleration in public spending published plans. He's also volunteered that he thinks the Prime Minister's on the same page. Are you picking up any kind of indications of, well, first of all, that being clearly true, and any tension with the Chancellor on that question?
I think there is tension. There's loads of tension between Defence and Treasury. There always has been. It is particularly acute at the moment because, look, Anna is right. There are lots of difficult choices about where we should be spending our money. There's an argument that you should be cutting welfare bill. But I can guarantee you, John, that the government will not be doing any of those things because Keir Starmer does not have the political strength to do things like cut welfare. We know that already. He doesn't have the political strength to even broadly kind of go deeper in cutting departmental budgets. So what that means, again for our listeners, is that taxes are going up. And we've already seen the Office of Budget Responsibility yesterday say that taxes by 2030 will have hit a record level. And they are so concerned about it. Their fear is that it will disincentivise people from working, doing the very basic fundamentals of life, John. Getting on, trying to earn more money and aspiring for your phone. Well, I won't do that because my marginal rate will be 70% if I hit a certain tax threshold. So that's the concern, that ultimately this isn't a government that has a track record of making difficult choices. There are 14 U-turns already for a reason. So there are real question marks about where that funding is going to come from.
Really great to get your thoughts. Steve Swinford, political editor at The Times, and Anna Mikhailova, Times Radio's political editor. Thank you. Coming up after 5:30,